I'm Amber.
And this is
Waking Up the Witch. We're your neighborhood witches. Each week, we talk about all things witchy and connect with other humans in a storytelling format about navigating life on this floating rock.
We're two curious ladies trying to understand the human experience. But while we do that, we think it's important to honor the people that lived here before us and honor the cultures and traditions that we're being inspired by.
This podcast is about waking up the witch, which means we are learning and growing every day. That being said, we are always open to feedback on how we can do better.
The views and opinions of our guests don't necessarily reflect the views and opinions of Waking Up the Witch. Now, let's go, ghouls. Hey, Amber.
Hi, Taylor.
How's it going?
So good. How are you?
Good. We just couldn't get enough of our guest, so we decided to jump into a part 2. So part 1, she kind of just shared her story with us and kind of what makes her her. It got really vulnerable, and it was just really nice to connect and hear her side of her story. Her side of life.
I like that.
And then today we hop into like the nitty gritty of human design, what it is. We'll talk about the types and a little bit of the other stuff. But it's just the real basic foundations. And then we'll have her back in a few weeks to kind of get into the details of everything.
Yeah, it's really fun. I have a little bit of knowledge of human design, and she turned on some light bulbs for me today, which was really exciting because it's so daunting and overwhelming to understand. And it is a journey. So if you know nothing about human design, or even if you know a little bit, it's overwhelming. And so try not to be overwhelmed and just soak up, what she's offering and start to explore a little bit of what your chart might look like. And it really helps to kind of begin to understand those pieces. And she really helps you as a newbie or someone who's just starting to explore human design to start to experiment with these basic fundamentals. So
yeah, and if there's anything that you're interested in or any questions that you have, we can ask her here on the show next time. And so just email us at wakingupthewitch@gmail.com or head over to Instagram at wakingupthewitch and send us a DM and we will bring it up.
Yeah, absolutely. We're excited and hope that you enjoy this episode.
Enjoy. Well, I just wanted to welcome back Allyson. We're going on a part 2 because we really want to deep dive into human design. And she's just going to share with us how she found human design and what that even is. Because I know a lot of people here have literally no idea what that even means. But probably keep hearing it everywhere too. So it's like, what is this thing I keep hearing about that everybody's interested in?
Yeah, it definitely feels like it's gaining in popularity, like more and more every day. Yeah. So I did find human design while I was still teaching. So if you haven't listened to part 1 of the episode, there's a lot of other context, life context around this. But yeah, I found human design when I was still a full-time high school Spanish teacher, and it was kind of this thing that I was listening to a YouTube video and someone was talking about chronic fatigue syndrome and mentioned that she thought maybe part of it was because she was a projector in human design. And I was like, well, I'm really tired. What? What is that? And so I did what a lot of people do, and I Googled human design and I put my information into a calculator and it said I was a projector, and I immediately got overwhelmed and didn't look at it again.
Yeah.
But I was like, got it. I am tired and I am a projector. So I got the information I wanted, I guess. But But yeah, it just felt like so complicated. And I was pretty well versed in astrology. I was super well versed in Myers-Briggs by this time. Like I had done all of the self-knowledge and self-help systems and stuff. And it just felt like so complex. And then there was a different YouTuber I was listening to someday who recommended a podcast, and it was the Expanded podcast with Lacey Phillips.
Oh, I haven't heard of that.
Lacey Phillips runs a manifestation company, I would say. It's like all of her work is around manifestation and this like system of how you find your limiting beliefs and how you can call different things in when you are able to expand beyond those. I would say it's not really work that I super resonate with anymore, but it was a recommendation I heard and I was like, okay, I'll listen to that. And at that time, I think the most recent podcast episode, or one of the most recent ones, was actually about human design. And I was like, oh my God, there it is again.
That's how it works.
And this was 2017. So I was still teaching. I was probably 24 at that time, about 7 years ago. And I think I listened to this whole podcast and it gave a little bit more context around human design. And I felt like it was slightly less overwhelming than it had been when I first Googled it. And I found other podcasts with this person, Jenna Zoe, in it. Not condoning Jenna Zoe's work. I have definitely moved away from how she transmits human design. But for an introduction, it was really supportive to have someone talk about it in a more approachable way. And yeah, I mean, I certainly just remember like feeling validation around understanding that certain types in human design are what we call non-energy types. And it's not that we don't have any energy at all, but that we don't have consistent energy. And this idea that, you know, there's 4 different types, and one of those types makes up about 70% of the population. And so the world is really built by and for this 70%.
Yeah.
And there's this other chunk of the population who often is struggling to keep up or feeling really like unrecognized because their gifts don't lend themselves well to like consistent access to energy in the way that we all are sort of forced to operate in capitalism. And so, yeah, I think that was kind of like this window into understanding how and why yoga had been so supportive for me to connect back to my own energy, why my burnout was so intense, and why it was only after a couple of months every year of having the summer off that I was really able to find my grounding even. My dog's getting a drink of water. I'm sorry if you can hear that. Yeah, so I think that was kind of like my initial like, ooh, maybe there's something here, you know, maybe there's something here. Always had felt a little like different. Maybe there's something here. So yeah, I think that was really my entry into it. And I listened to a bunch of videos and podcasts about it. And I have a notebook. I still have it from 2017 where like I would take all information I could find about human design and I would like write it in my own words in a notebook. And I have like these color-coded, super intense notes that I took when I was just trying to like get a grasp of processing the information in some way because it is so expansive. Yeah, there's like so many different aspects to it. So yeah, that was kind of my introduction in.
Okay. So what is it? And like, where did it come from? And why is everyone talking about it all of a sudden?
Yeah, so human design is a system, and it's actually a synthesis of systems. And so astrology, for example, if people are already familiar with that, is part of human design. It's part of what goes into making human design. But it also incorporates aspects of the I Ching, which is an ancient Chinese divination system. I think the part of it is connected to the Kabbalah as well, which is like an ancient religious text. there are notes of like quantum physics roped into human design as well. So it's this really like dynamic and very complex, but also very simple when it comes down to like living it. System that talks about, I think there are so many systems we can use to get to know ourselves better, and like Myers-Briggs is one that I really liked for a long time. That's very cognitive in nature. Like even the test itself is you're just getting information from your brain into the test, and like that's the information it gathers. I loved it for a long time, but in astrology too, like we're getting kind of like through one lens, and we're getting this idea of how the planets are making their mark on our life path, sort of. What human design does differently, I think, is that it really speaks to like the energetic quality of each person. And it can get really specific about like how that energy shows up in their lives. And so like the very kind of like simple first layer of human design would be to talk about energy type, which, as I mentioned, there's 4. There are generators, which make up the largest component of all of us in human design. There are projectors, which are about 20%. Generators are 70%. And manifestors are about 9%. And then that last 1% are called reflectors. So that's kind of like, I think type can be really useful because it gives us at least a little bit of context around like energetically how we operate. And it also gives us a strategy. So human design, we really like go with these 2 things called our strategy and our authority. And our strategy helps us honor our energy type and our aura type as we move through the world. And our authority speaks to where in our body does information come from most consistently that we can access and listen to. So yeah, strategy and authority are like the main 2 things. And for anyone who's brand new, I would recommend learning your type because that'll give you your strategy. Then you can learn your authority as well. And honestly, like if you just had those 2 pieces of information and experimented with them, that's being in your experiment in human design. You're starting the experiment there.
So can you break down the types for us and what they mean?
Totally, but I really want to know if you 2 know your types.
I just looked mine up right now.
I'm a generator.
Okay. Projector.
You're a projector?
I guess so.
Oh, I never knew that about you.
What does that mean?
So I'm assuming you have your birth time and you feel accurate about it, like that it's accurate.
I just put this. It's the Jenna Zoe chart. I just Googled it and I put my name and my birth time and then where I was born in there, and it says projector splenic, the regal authority figure, 4 out of 6, and being invited.
So you're a 4/6 splenic projector. Got it. For anyone listening, I would encourage you to use a website called bodygraph.io. I just think it's I think it's a nice one. And I trust the people who made that website.
Awesome.
So I would encourage, and if you're following along and you want to look yours up, just type bodygraph.io.
Link in the bio.
Cool. So and then Amber, you are a generator.
I'm a generator, sacral authority, and strategy is responding.
Cool. And what are your numbers, your profile?
I'm a 5/1.
Cool. Okay, so 4/6 splenic projector, 5/1 sacral generator. I'm a 5/1 emotional projector. For anyone curious.
So fun.
Yeah. So I'll kind of get down to energy type first, and say that we have our energy types. I'll walk through those quickly. I just want to give a note on nuance to everyone that just because Taylor and I are both projectors doesn't mean that we have literally anything in common. I'm sure we do, but just okay. To 70% of the world are generators, and that doesn't mean that you're just like, oh, I'm just one of the generators and the vast majority, because I feel like people get a little bit of like type superiority, like, ooh, I'm rare, I'm a better type. So there's no good or bad.
Like to be
there's
different.
there's no easier or harder, and this system is incredibly nuanced, and so there could be 5 splenic projectors who are all completely different people. So
well, there's so
just
many,
a note on nuance.
there's just so much to human design that makes up your uniqueness.
Well, this thing, it says I'm bitter. Whatever that means.
You said that with the most bitter voice you've ever had. I'm bitter that I'm being called bitter.
Oh, it's so fun. Yeah. Yeah, there's so much to it. But so I'll say like the types, I'm going to go through the types. This is a little bit like knowing your sun sign in astrology, where like
Love
just because there's 2 Aries suns doesn't mean that they have anything in common. But they might. I'm an Aries sun.
What's your moon and rising, since it's come up?
Yeah, so I'm an Aries sun, Aquarius moon, and Cancer rising.
Oh,
love that combo.
Does mean my chart ruler is the moon in my 8th house, which listen to episode 1 for more on, on the pain of an 8th house moon.
Yes.
So yeah, the 4 types. So the first type is called the generator. And this can also be if your chart says you're a manifesting generator. Some people make that distinction between 2 different types. For my purposes, they're the same type, and they're just kind of like their energy will flow a bit differently if you're a manifesting generator versus a generator. But the generators of the world, this is like where we get life force as a collective, as humanity. Generators are here to respond to life, and so that strategy for the generator is called wait to respond. And what that really means is like there is a part of the body for a generator called the sacral. It's called the sacral center. If you see your chart, it's usually pink, and it's located kind of around like the pelvic area in the body graph. And that's like your gut. Like that's your gut. That's where the energy comes from. That's where life force energy comes from. If you know anything about the chakras are part of human design as well. I'm sorry I didn't say that before when I was talking about the synthesis. But yeah, generators all have that energy defined. So it's something they have consistent access to, is this ability to respond to life and to have energy to bring forth whatever they have a response to. And so I like to just kind of remind people that just because generators have energy doesn't mean that it's easier for them to keep up with demands of capitalism. Because just because you have energy doesn't mean you have a response to do that work. I think sometimes people will be like, yeah, the generators are the worker bees of the world. And I'm like, we need generators to listen to their true gut response, because the thing about a generator is that the energy is consistent and can be regenerated when it's sustainable. And it's only sustainable if someone has a true response to what they're doing. And so, yeah, like really listening to the body, waiting to feel that gut response. Sometimes people say it'll be like an uh-huh or an like it might even come out in that kind of like guttural, like noises that we can make in response to things. But yeah, really asking like, do I have energy for this right now? Or having a loved one ask like, do you want to do this or this? And giving options, and really like tuning into that sacral center of the body, or those sacral noises, to know what is right for you. And you're waiting to respond to life. You're waiting for life to show you what's next for you based on what you feel lit up in response to, or what you have that gut response for.
I love that you brought up like having the options, because I'm also a Libra sun, and so indecision is something that's very real for me. And I always tell people like, just, what do you want to eat? I don't know, give me 2 or 3 options. I can get you down to where we're supposed to go, but like I can't just pull them out of thin air. I there's too many options. If you can give
Yeah.
me, and sometimes I also just literally like to flip a coin, like let the universe decide. So that's interesting. I always thought it was because I was a Libra and I just refused to make a decision.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like, you know, Libra's an air sign too, so you can get really heady if you don't know what's right. But yeah, tuning back into like, what is my body's wisdom telling me right now?
Yeah.
And maybe I need to like look at the menus of the restaurants to make a decision.
Totally.
And like, you need something to respond to, right?
Yeah.
You can't respond to like, what do you want to get for dinner? It's like, I don't know.
My least
what are we
favorite
choosing
question.
between?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every night.
So that's the generator. Like, obviously there's so much more to it, but like, just, knowing that we're connecting to like life force energy that's located like in the pelvis area, like that sacral center, and that energy is sustainable. Generators can get burnt out too.
Yeah.
If they're constantly doing things that they don't want to do or that they don't have a response for. It's like, using a battery that you're not recharging at all. Generators are also like, we say that it's healthy for them to get tired. It's healthy for them to get tired doing things that they enjoy in some way before they go to bed. And so like if a generator is like hasn't done anything all day, they might have a really hard time falling asleep because they're waiting for that kind of like battery pack to get drained out so that they can reset and start again the following day. So yeah, for people with kids, generator kids too, it can be helpful or healthy to help them use up their energy in some way, because they'll like pass out. My partner's a generator and just like passes out when he's tired. Whereas the non-energy types can have a much different relationship with sleep. Like it's helpful for me to go to bed before I'm tired if I want to get actual quality sleep as a projector. If I wait until I'm like ready to pass out, I'm just going to wake up exhausted.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so maybe it's Taylor's turn to talk about projectors.
Yeah, make it about me.
Yeah. Yeah, so projectors are the second most common energy type. We are about 20% of the population. Some people say 19, some people say 22. I just say about 20. I keep the numbers round. Projectors are really here to act as guides and kind of like to guide energy. The thing about projectors is that because we don't have that sacral energy defined, we're pretty good at knowing what to do with energy. We don't have it consistently, and so we can gain wisdom about how energy can be used effectively and efficiently. But yeah, acting as guides for people, projectors tend to really thrive in a one-on-one setting. And so I know, Taylor, you are a
hairstylist.
A hairstylist. Yeah. My last favorite hairstylist was a projector as well. And just like being able to kind of like go deep with someone over the span of a hair appointment might feel really supportive versus like being in a big group where your energy can kind of get lost there. But yeah, projectors are here to guide people, to guide energy, and that one-on-one setting in particular is where the projectors really shine. The generator aura is considered open and enveloping. It's kind of like it's open and enveloping because we're waiting for things to come into the aura so that you can respond to them. So generators are responsive, open, like kind of an open aura like that. And the projector aura, if we could see it, would be shaped like a cone going into whoever we are with. So the projector aura is very much focused outward. It's focused on the other. Projectors tend to resonate with like learning about themselves by learning about others first, and then we can recognize what feels true for us kind of only through looking outward. Our aura doesn't go this way.
Interesting.
It goes the other way.
So it's not just that you're a Scorpio sun.
Fascinating.
Yeah. It's because you're also a projector.
Yeah. Well, the like learning from others. I used to be like, have I ever had an original fucking thought in my entire life, or am I just like a blend of every person I've ever experienced in my life? And so that really resonates with me.
It helps you to discover yourself. So cool.
Projectors are here to be recognized and invited. So in the way that Amber as a generator is here kind of like waiting to respond to life, waiting for that gut response to show you the way, projectors are waiting for an invitation. They're waiting for someone to recognize that genius spark within them, whatever that is for that person, and to invite them into something. And so projectors tend to be oriented towards systems and like understanding systems, mastering systems, and being able to kind of have like the bird's eye view on how the system works and the steps that go into it. Because projectors tend to be very study oriented as well. Like learning is our way to find success. Because we can offer guidance to people more effectively when we're understanding how the system works and understanding how to be a good guide for people, how to be an effective guide for people, how to guide energy well.
You're so good at that. It's like you're in the perfect profession, and you're specializing that you do too. Is so much that. That's
I
so
just
cool.
also feel like I need every detail before I feel comfortable doing most things. Otherwise, I feel like a fucking imposter. And I think people are stupid when they just go out there and do whatever. I guess sometimes I am like, I look up to the like kind of delusion, but it's like, how are you just putting yourself out there when you don't have all of the information?
Yeah. Yeah, I totally feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the other thing that Taylor mentioned reading on the in the little blurbs there was about bitterness. So I'll speak a little bit for generators and projectors, and then I'll get to manifestors and reflectors in a moment here, about the themes of the signature theme for each type. It's kind of like that's our potential. That's what we have potential to experience when we are following our strategy and authority. And the not self theme tends to be kind of like what is dominating our life when we're experiencing a lot of resistance or when we're really out of alignment. Or for projectors and generators, it's like we're really not here to like spark something and initiate this brand new thing against all odds, right? Like we're waiting to respond or we're waiting for an invitation. We can do something new and incredible based on an invitation or based on response. But yeah, so the signature and not self themes for the generator, the signature is satisfaction and the not self is frustration. And I just love to take a second to go back to like, where is this sacral center in the body that we're listening to as a generator? It's like connected to the sex organs. And so if you think about satisfaction and frustration and those keynotes, you can kind of like draw some connections from there of like, how does it feel to like release your energy in a way that feels satisfying? And what do you feel like afterwards? That like kind of like pleasant exhaustion. And frustration is sort of like, it's like a bottled up feeling. Like I have energy and I can't go anywhere with it, or there's resistance against what I want to do or my energy wants to go. So that's the signature and not self for a generator. And for a projector, it is success. That's our signature. And bitterness is our not self. And bitterness is like, why isn't anyone recognizing me? I have so much to offer. Who the fuck is that? And why is she writing a book? Like,
seriously.
So great.
Yeah, it's so different from satisfaction and frustration. It is such a different experience. And I like to think too, like 70% of the world is walking around feeling satisfied when they're doing work that satisfies them. And projectors are never going to be satisfied. In fact, when we finish something, it's like I tend to experience some relief, like, oh, good, it's over.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't get that like full body, like, oh, that felt so good. We did the thing. Because success is completely different, and success is like so is satisfaction. They're so individually defined
Mm-hmm.
by what that looks like for the person.
Yeah, and it's almost like if I do feel like I've accomplished one thing or become good at that, it's like, okay, what's next? Like, what am I gonna specialize in next? I'm getting bored of doing the same shit every single day, even though I'm good at it. Like, what am I gonna do next?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And it's like, we don't get to know. We're waiting to be invited. So we're like, okay, back to the office to like study and read and master a new skill, or to continue to hone my craft and my mastery of a system.
Yeah. Mine's like, what
wait.
class am I taking next?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What's
that's
the
so
authority for projector?
good
Splenic.
question.
Or no?
Yeah, so Taylor is a splenic projector, which is probably the second most common type of projector.
Okay.
If that's helpful at all. So there are a lot of splenic projectors out there. But I want to speak quickly to authority and say that even generators can have an authority other than their sacral.
Okay.
So they're still waiting to respond as their strategy.
Okay.
And then their authority for some generators is going to be emotional.
Okay.
50% of everybody has emotional authority. And that can be manifestors, generators, or projectors. And so for emotional authority, such as myself, the emotional authority is all about waiting for clarity. And so for an emotional generator, that would look like, okay, I definitely have a response to this in this moment. This feels like a yes in my body.
Wow.
And then waiting however long it takes for emotional clarity. Emotional beings are kind of like riding the highs and lows all the time. Again, like listen to episode 1 for some emotional stuff from me and the journey that I took Taylor and Amber on. Because emotional authority, it's 50% of the world is consistently, regardless of situations, riding emotional ups and downs.
Wow.
And what that means for generators is like they might respond and feel like a yes in the moment, but the next day they're like, ugh, I don't want to do that. And so there's a secondary authority there, or a primary authority there, that's guiding them to wait for clarity instead of feeling the need to like say yes in the moment.
I feel like I have both of those. Like I think I've gotten better at giving myself grace for, how I may feel in a day for a lot of things. But yeah, I do feel like there can be a little bit of that emotional response for me where it's like I committed to something and a week later I just don't have the energy anymore for it, that now it's a no. And then there's obligation that sets in. But yeah, that's interesting. Is that possible to have, like, would that be a secondary for me possibly to have emotional authority?
It is possible for a generator to have emotional authority. From what you shared that you read from your chart, it sounds like you do not, that you have sacral authority. But what I think is really cool about what you just shared is that you're kind of underlining the fact that sacral and splenic authority, so both of you, it speaks in the now.
Yeah.
In the now.
Yeah.
So the truth for you exists in the now.
Okay.
The truth for an emotional authority, we say, this is like a direct quote from the creator of human design, there's no truth in the now for emotional authority. So like whether or not it's a yes for me, like I might not know for a week, I might know tomorrow morning. I don't really know in the now.
Okay.
And it's like trusting that the right opportunities will allow time for, like, if it goes away because you didn't say yes right away, it wasn't the right opportunity for an emotional person. Whether that's a response or an initiation or an invitation, whatever that is. But yeah, for both of you, it's like the truth is in the now for you. Do you have a response right now? And it's interesting the way that like commitments work too, and how commitments can sometimes challenge our ability to follow our strategy and authority.
Totally.
Because it's like, I said yes because it seemed like the right thing to do, but like when I really listen to my body, it doesn't feel like a yes.
Well, and I think that's the experiment, right? Is listening to your body and allowing it to respond, at least for those authorities. Maybe not so much the emotional authority, but you're still listening to your body in some way, even with the emotional authority.
Yeah, exactly. The experience of clarity for an emotional person is really connected to this idea of nervousness, like nervousness and clarity. And that if we feel like nervousness, or for me, that sometimes shows up as an avoidance, like a nervous avoidance of something, that's probably a no.
Yeah.
It's interesting to have this authority that's so like emotional and it changes all the time. And sometimes it's a hell yes, and sometimes it's a hell no. And we come back and it's like, ultimately it's a yes, but I went through this whole fucking journey on the way to a yes.
Yeah.
That is the emotional experience. Exactly. The beauty of emotional authority is it gives us this like multi-dimensional, non-binary awareness of everything that this opportunity arose for me as a projector. Like an invitation came and it felt like a yes at first. And then for a week, I was like, I definitely don't want to do that. It feels awful. And that it kind of evens out over time to be a yes question mark or a no question mark, where we really feel like 80% certain is kind of as good as it gets for emotional authority. But we end up with this very like multi-dimensional awareness of everything because we're able to see it from all different angles throughout our emotional process.
That's a journey. And what about splenic? How does that show up then if you're splenic authority?
Yeah. So splenic authority,
actual spleen?
so funny, right? So it is the spleen center. It's one of the shapes on the body graph. The sacral is the one we talked about at the pelvis. It's pink. And then on the left side of the chart is the spleen on the bottom left. And then bottom right is the solar plexus, which is the source of emotional authority.
Okay.
But yeah, so it's not necessarily the like anatomical spleen, but it is the spleen center in the human design system. And the spleen is connected to this like in the moment instinctual survival awareness. So splenic beings can be, they don't have to be, like kind of spontaneous, which is not to say like spontaneous in the sense of, hey, do you want to go to like Maldives tomorrow? And you're like, yeah, let's do it. Not that kind of spontaneous, but it's like a spontaneous inner knowing that shows up in the moment. And that could bring someone to do something that we like consider spontaneous, like taking a trip like that. But it could also be like walking down a path, taking a hike somewhere, and you're like, I need to turn left.
Yeah.
And you don't know why. It's splenic awareness speaks in the moment, usually one time, and usually without explanation. And it tends to be connected to this like instinctual survival energy. So I have a friend who's a splenic projector who has had stories like the one I just told, of like walking in the woods and you feel like you have to move and you don't know why. And then you like hear a tree crash and you're like, oh, I knew that without knowing that.
Yeah, that feels like that resonates for you, for me,
definitely.
as your friend.
And then what are the numbers? Like 4, 6, 1, whatever.
Yeah, so profile is another part of human design. I'll say really briefly, there are some other authorities. We have kind of the three main ones represented in this little coven trio here. Emotional, sacral, and splenic. But there are also authorities that come from the ego. Like an ego authority is a thing that has a lot to do with just like want. Do I have the willpower? Do I have the want to do this? There is self-projected authority, which is specific to projectors, which is really connected to like the identity center in the sense of direction. And it comes through a lot through like processing verbally. and like hearing the truth as it's spoken from the identity. We also have types we haven't talked about too. So again, we have kind of like projectors and generators.
Yeah. We'll go back to that.
Yeah. So yeah, there's like ego and self-projected authority. There's also mental authority, which is also considered external, like no authority, which is another kind of more rare one. There's lunar authority, which is specific to the 1%, those reflectors out in the world who are moving through a full lunar cycle in order to make a decision and connecting to how they feel throughout that whole entire lunar cycle as the moon moves through all 64 gates throughout the course of a lunar cycle. And so, yeah, there's a ton of variety.
For every type, is there potential for people to have all of these authorities, or are they specific to certain types?
Yeah, so the only people with lunar authority are reflectors.
Okay.
And some authorities apply to all types. So emotional authority applies to 3 of the 4 types. Sacral authority is specific to generators because only generators have a defined sacral center. That's their like consistent energy center there. And ego authority is specific to either projectors or manifestors. Self-projected authorities, projectors only. So
that makes sense.
What it really comes down to is that the planets move through the whole kind of like, if you imagine the sky as a pie or a pizza that's divided into different slices. In astrology, we say that the sky is divided into 12 slices. And each slice is a sign: Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, etc. And human design says yes and. Yes, there are the 12 signs, and each sign is actually divided into gates. So instead of having 12 chunks, we actually have 64 pieces in human design. And the planets are moving through these 64 pieces at all times. And so at the time we're recording this, I think the sun, I don't know off the top of my head actually, but the sun is like in a gate, and we can say like, yes, it's Cancer season right now. We're in that part of the sky, but more specifically, we're in this gate of the sky.
That's really cool.
So the planets are moving through these gates all the time. And so in astrology, we have a sun sign, we have a sun gate in human design as well, and a moon gate and all of that.
Cool.
When it comes to the body graph, those gates are actually, those little numbers are actually listed on the body graph as well. And so based on where the planets are and what gate they're in, we can say we have a gate activated. And when 2 gates come together in the body graph, there's 2 gates like touching one another. Wow, now we have a channel. And there's actually energy flowing from one gate into the next gate in our body graph, out of the sky now into the body graph. And that's what creates definition. And so the reason that Amber is a generator is because there are 2 gates that she has defined in her chart that happen to meet up and form a channel that connects the sacral, that center, to another center. So there's energy flowing back and forth between 2 centers. Yeah, so same thing for Taylor as a splenic person. The reason you're splenic is because there are 2 gates that define a channel that create definition for you. And so you have consistent access to the places where you have gates activated, touching each other, defining centers and defining a channel. So even something as simple as like everyone has, all these people have sacral authority or sacral strategy or whatever. It gets more nuanced to say, okay, but what channel specifically? How does the energy flow into and out of the sacral center? It's not just about like what you have a response to. We can get a little more specific about like what colors your version of being a sacral being.
Okay.
Wow.
Hopefully that created some clarity around
there's
like
a lot
what happens
that clicked on for me today that I didn't understand about human design so far. And it's it's a journey of just connecting with people who do understand that's helped me start to put together some pieces for myself. I really like, for me, what and the way you explained it that really clicked on was the looking at the pie and seeing it and comparing it astrologically and knowing like that we have the 12 signs and then breaking that down into the 64 gates. And then it makes me really excited to like on the daily, what are we activating collectively? Also, that's very fascinating to me. So thank you for explaining that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and it can get nuanced as well in terms of the transit. So, like your experience of like, oh, I kind of feel like I have emotional authority.
Mm-hmm.
It could be that there's something activating your chart that has made you emotional for an extended period of time. I would have to look to know for certain. But that does happen. Like we have planets like Pluto that move really slowly, and so if you've got the opposing gate, you could be experiencing transitory
So cool.
solar plexus
I didn't even know this was possible with human design, and I think that really excites me.
Yeah.
It's a yes in my sacral.
So I don't want to forget about the
Yeah.
other two types either.
Yes. So slightly less common, but beautiful, amazing types. I have close friends that are these types as well. We have manifestors, which make up 9% of the population. And whereas most types are waiting to respond, waiting for invitations, or waiting a lunar cycle, manifestors are technically also waiting for an urge to come from within them, a creative urge of some kind that's going to move them into motion. They're waiting to be moved by something from within, basically. And so a lot of people will learn about manifestors and be like, oh, I wish I were a manifestor because then I wouldn't have to wait for stuff. But manifestors too are at the whim of the cosmos or whatever, because they're waiting for an urge to come from within them. And it takes a lot of discipline to honor creative urges and to be able to like step into the unknown with like, I don't know where this is going to go, but this is what feels right for me right now. So yeah, manifestors are here to initiate things. They're here to initiate based on what moves them from within. And manifestors can be emotional, they can be splenic, they can be ego-driven. Just depending on the nuance of how their chart is connected and what's connected to what. But what manifestors have is they have a motor, any one of the motors in human design. Some of the centers are called motors. A manifestor has a motor connected to their throat, their center for expression. And so it makes sense that manifestors are here to bring something from within and bring it out into the world, because they're bringing something from a motor center out through the expression center, the throat.
Okay.
My husband's a manifestor.
Ooh, so I was going to say manifestors experience peace is their signature. And they have what we call a closed aura. So generators have the open aura, projectors have the penetrating aura, manifestors have what we call a closed aura. Closed aura, totally different. Their signature is called peace, and their not self theme is anger.
So interesting.
I'm looking up Curtis.
We have another partner to look up.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
And then there's the reflector, which you said was 1%. Wow.
Yeah. So one of my best friends from high school who I'm still close with is a reflector. And reflectors, so if you like look at the body graph, which is the one with all the shapes that are colored in or not colored in, reflectors have none of the shapes colored in.
Yeah. Wow.
So the reflector aura is described as sampling. It's not open or closed or penetrating. It's called sampling. They're kind of like, their aura is taking little bits and pieces of everything and sampling it, almost like tasting it. And reflectors are they kind of like reflect back the health of a community or of a space. They're very sensitive to their environment and to the people in their environment. Projectors are really designed to go deep, kind of with one person at a time. So there'll be usually there's like one important person cyclically or whatever. And reflectors are different. Energetically, they're not getting the same depth of a read as a projector gets when you like look into the soul of another person. But reflectors are, environmentally sensitive, and kind of like if we get idealistically, a reflector is placed at the center of a community, and is able to provide updates on like the health of the community based on what they can sample.
That's a big job.
And because they don't have any centers to find, they don't have any definition, they're also extremely sensitive to transits and what's happening outside of them, which is why their authority is called lunar authority. The moon is the fastest moving like celestial body. And so throughout 28 days, they can really get a flavor of each gate, all 64 gates throughout those 28 days.
Whoa.
And if something still feels true and correct after all that journey, then they know that it's right for them.
Wow.
So Curtis is a manifesting generator.
Oh, we got 2 Manny-Gen hubbies.
What does the design date mean?
Yeah, so human design is really unique in that we know, obviously, like you entered your birth information. For astrology, you enter your birth information and you get a snapshot of where the planets were the moment that you were born. Human design also does that, but it also takes into account, it's supposed to be like a certain mark in the gestational period, like when we were in utero, about 88 days before we were born, that we hit some like gestational, I don't know, I can't think of the word, but like point.
Right.
And so human design actually takes another chart and then juxtaposes the two on top of one another. So your chart is speaking not only to when you gained consciousness and like where the planets were when you gained consciousness at the time of birth, but also 88 degrees before your birth. Unconscious. So we have the conscious and the unconscious represented in human design, which is different, I think, than astrology, and gives a little bit more nuance to the way that we show up.
That's always like one of the most interesting parts that I have learned about human design is, and I've heard it be described as like the soul self and the like physical self. And it's really cool to me. Really fascinating.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. The 88 degrees before birth is kind of like the unconscious, or represents the body. And then we have the mind side, or the personality side, which develops at birth.
So cool. I think we got to start wrapping up a little bit. So if you could kind of, if there's anything else we want to touch on and summarize and put a little bow on this for us, since we've been on here for 2 hours.
There's just so much.
There's so much, and it's so interesting.
Yeah, and it's coming out a little bit non-linearly, so I hope
we're very tangential around here, so everyone's used to that.
True.
Yeah, I mean, we've covered like strategy and authority, at least to an extent, and kind of run through the types. We could run through profile, or we could just leave it. And if you guys have any other questions about yourselves, or like if you have any questions that are like, why am I like this, or why is my partner like this, we could do a couple of those too.
Maybe we'll just go over our specific profiles, and what that means.
That sounds great.
Okay. So what's a profile?
Yes, I know. Yeah, profile. So you two were asking about Taylor's a 4-6 and Amber's a 5-1. I'm also a 5-1. So profile, it does come from our sun gates. And it's like, I know we did this whole pie in the sky thing and we were like, it's not 12, it's 64. But it's actually even smaller than that if you incorporate profile, because it's giving not just like what gate your sun is in, but even like what degree in that
Okay.
gate,
Wow.
basically. And so yeah, so profile speaks to if human design had like a personality type, I feel like profile would be the closest that we could get to that.
Okay.
It's almost like the costume we wear as we walk through our life journey. Whereas aura type is very like energetic.
Mhm.
Profile is a little bit more like archetypal, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have two profiles represented here.
Mhm.
Amber and I are 5-1s, which the 5 is the heretic and the 1 is the investigator. So the heretic investigator is a profile. You could also be like a heretic hermit or a hermit heretic or a martyr heretic.
Mm.
There's different heretical profiles, but yeah, the 5-1 profile is really here to provide a universal message based on something that we have a really strong foundation in. And so that foundation could be in like rocket science or app development or cycle health or really anything at all.
Mhm.
But being able to like provide a message that can be heard universally. That's really the role of the 5, is to be able to universalize on something, which is what I've been doing throughout this podcast as well, being able to share something in a way that'll land with different people.
Mhm.
Famous 5-1s, there are many. Taylor Swift is a 5-1.
Cool.
Billie Eilish is another 5-1. I want to say Jennifer Lawrence is a 5-1. Apparently I can only come up with like Hollywood
Love
celebrities
it.
in this,
Yeah.
but there are many famous 5-1s. Frida Kahlo is another one as well who has passed. But the 5 is called the heretic because we can do things differently. Like there's a heretical nature to being a 5th line. And we often don't necessarily even realize when we are being heretical or
Mhm.
behaving heretically or sharing a message that is going to rub some people the wrong way. And the thing about the heretic as well is that we often get placed in situations where there are a lot of expectations of us. People can't really see the heretic. There's like a mist sort of around us energetically where people can't really see us. And so projection is a huge theme for 5th lines, relating to people not being able to see who we truly are or seeing something that's not there. Like, I think this person can save my life and then we can't. And it's like we're burned at the stake is something we talk
Mhm.
about with heretic life as well. So yeah, expectation and projection are really big themes for 5th lines. The purpose that serves is we can speak universally because people are seeing different things in us. Like Taylor Swift's music is such a good example of the universal message. She's talking about her life and these like awful breakups, and people are like, she's talking about my life, and she literally is not.
Yeah.
So yeah, the foundational piece of the 5-1, I mentioned universalizing on something that you feel very solid in. The foundation is an important piece for the 5-1 to be like adequately prepared to show up with that message. And so there can be some relationship to like insecurity that 5-1s have, and like, is my foundation secure enough? Do I know enough? Is really common for 5-1s.
Amazing.
Sounds like imposter syndrome could be a part of that. Possibly not knowing if you have all your pieces and everything that you need when actually it's built in. You absolutely do.
Yeah, totally. And I think, when there are expectations placed, it's like, and will I be punished if I'm not prepared enough?
Mm-hmm.
Can be an experience for some 5-1s. The creator of human design, Ra Uru, who was a 5-1
Okay.
manifestor.
Amazing.
Yeah, how does that resonate, Amber?
I mean, I just keep thinking about like what I'm doing now in my life and my business, and the way I do it is very different. Like, I literally started my business. I was like, I don't know what my hours are going to be. And you know what? I've worked for corporate my whole life. Like, and I'm really tuning into my feminine energy and, working with my cycle and how my energy is and how I show up in the world every day. And I'm my own boss, so I can decide what that looks like and be really flowy and really like taking the pressure off while still having some residual pressure of literally you're 5 minutes late, you're written up, or you're sick 3 days in a row, you need a doctor's note, just all of these constructs that I had to exist in. And so, I mean, that basic, just I literally tell people like I run my business in my feminine energy and honoring my flow. And people fucking love that. And I wasn't expecting that response when I first started doing that. So like there's that piece. And then I mean, I'm just like I'm such a giver and I don't know. If I feel someone's in there in my shop and they like need something, I'm like, here, just this is for you. It's like breaking down capitalism in my own little ways like that. We literally have, and it's not my idea, but happy to have it at my shop. Now we have like what we're calling a witch's cupboard, and it's like a free little library. Take a book, leave a book, but for witchy shit, which is pretty cool. And then I think even just like the way I help people and work with people, I'm definitely not like a gatekeeper of informations or how to access your gifts. Like if it's coming up in conversation, whether you're my client or you're just someone in my energy at the moment, like I freely share, just to be with that person and to help them see themselves in a way that I'm seeing. Like I can see your gifts and here's some ways you can work with that. And I feel like that could kind of play into the 5-1 profile. It's very different. And I get a lot of feedback from that too, from people. And now that I've been open for a little over a year, it's like, it's why people come. It's why I've literally feel like I've collected people who they're like, this is my home now. This is where I am. And I don't want employees, but I want to work as a collective. Like, how do we all contribute to this space? I have a space. I need money to keep the space going, but like, how do we do this differently than it's ever been done before, where we're not playing into the roles and the way that we've been taught we've had to play in the world? And that's very different and radical. And I still don't really know what that looks like fully, but it's kind of just becoming itself. I feel like I've never really lived in my design until having the opportunity to like be in my business.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful share on like honoring your energy as a sacral being, and also on the ability of fifth lines to connect with strangers. Taylor will talk about in a moment with the fourth line. There's such a beautiful ability to have influence and to be influenced by a community, like a fractal, a network of people that you're familiar with, or like my neighbor's cousin's husband, or stuff like that. And fifth line's really like, we're here for strangers. We're here to have 5-1s in particular, like to be able to have like life-changing connections with people, even if it's just one time that we've ever met them. Like karmic karmic shit is really, really common for fifth lines and other profiles, but 5-1s and 5-2s in particular.
I feel that big time with the people I interact with. And even when I was working retail and corporate life, like still having those types of connections for sure. Where it's like, I'm not here for the work. I'm here for the people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so profile can be either left angle or right angle. And the left angle are the ones that are like here for cleaning up karma. And right angle people are generally there on like a personal destiny of some kind. So Taylor has a personal destiny as a 4-6. Yeah, so the 4-6 profile is such an interesting one because it has so much wrapped up in other people, but it's still that right angle personal destiny profile. But the 4 is called the opportunist, and the 6 is called the role model. And so, Taylor, how old are you right now?
I think I'm 32.
Okay. And what was your transition like from like 28 to 32?
Intense. Yeah.
Yeah.
On
so
my
obviously
27th birthday, I think it was my 27th birthday. We were driving across country and our my car started to break down, so we pulled over at a hotel and then woke up and our U-Haul was gone with everything that we ever owned in it.
Oh my God.
And then like our housing fell through as we were moving from the Midwest back out to Oregon, and it's like we just showed up to Oregon with nothing, and then throughout those next few years we're just like rebuilding everything that we've ever had. And it's like when I was starting my business as a self-employed hairstylist and just going through, I mean, then COVID and all of that.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah. So,
pretty insane.
crazy.
everyone has a Saturn return, obviously. And like those years are rocky for many of us. But anyone with a 6 in their profile is especially impacted.
Mhm.
Because the 6th line is meant to live life in 3 phases. So there's like age 0 until Saturn return, and then Saturn return through Uranus opposition, which is around 50, I think. Or is it Chiron return? It's about age 30 to 50 approximately. And then the 3rd phase is 50 until the end of the life. And those 3 phases are really marked by like totally different ways to orienting to the world. I will say for you, the 6 is unconscious, the 4 is conscious, the 6 is unconscious. So if this is like, you kind of feel it, but it doesn't totally resonate, that's okay. But yeah, those 3 phases of life, and particularly just for how old you are right now, it feels important to speak to that. The first phase of life is this like, we have to fuck around and find out because how else are we supposed to do it? And so there's a lot of like experimentation that's happening, and a lot of like resilience that is required that 6 lines don't necessarily always have. But yeah, it's kind of like trying it and figuring it out and just seeing what happens. There's a lot of experimentation with that phase of life. And then Saturn return marks this transition from what we call off the roof to on the roof. And it's like it's this transition of moving from this externally oriented, like trying everything, finding it out the hard way, to observing and processing and retreating a little bit out of like the experimentation phase. Where there can be a little bit more of a distance, like a distanced feeling between you and life or between you and others, where you're moving into like the role of the observer for a little while.
Yeah. Interesting. Especially just becoming a mom too for you, like that naturally becomes that, the first couple years of your life, much more of that than before.
Definitely.
Also, and yeah, that's so fascinating.
That is so interesting.
this is what I love about human design, because I feel like you really get to understand yourself for like in a way that you always felt was there, but maybe never like fully were able to realize, because you're living in the societal design, not your human design.
I also just don't have the energy anymore to like give a fuck. So I do feel like I just chill and observe more now, because I'm just like, oh, I don't care anymore. Like, I'm just going to watch you go through this or have this argument or do whatever you're doing, because like, why does this affect me?
Yeah.
I'm here for the entertainment.
Yeah.
That's kind of a gift.
Yeah, I mean, that's such like it feels like such a reflection of your energy type as well. Like projectors are here to wait to be invited. So if you've got a friend or a family member who's complaining, that is not an invitation to you to provide guidance about their life. So if you're like, I'm just going to watch you go through it, it's like there might even be a little bit of bitterness in that. But like, yeah, I don't have energy to like force my guidance
At all.
when it's uninvited.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other part of your profile, Taylor, is the opportunist. And so that like stable network of humans and relationships in your life is really like a really important part of the 4-6. Obviously looks a little bit different when you're on the roof in this current 20-year phase of your life. But yeah, you'll come back off the roof around age 50. And that's when the role model is really embodied, because you've been a role model your whole life, of course. But the embodiment of the role model comes when they're back off the roof and they did the experimentation and they did the observation and reflection and like licked their wounds a little bit from that first phase. And then you're back off the roof as like the role model that you
So interesting.
have grown
That's when I'll do
into
my
over
TED
time.
Talk.
Can't wait.
They would be super cool too. Yeah. But yeah, that fourth line is really all about stable relationships and the opportunities that come to you and come through you in relation to your network or your fractal of people that you know.
My network is very important to me.
So cool.
Amazing. Thank you so much. This is so fascinating. Obviously, we could do this forever, but
yeah, there's so much more to dig into, but I feel this is a really good starting point, and also like making people want more. And hopefully they come and work with you and get to like learn a little bit more about themselves. And if you're open, we would love a part 3 at some point too. Because there really is just so much to dive into here. It's endless.
Yeah, if we did a part 3, I would love to talk more about deconditioning as a topic. It's such an important part of human design. Divesting from like societal norms and investing in like the lived somatic experience of being in our bodies. And where that leads us, because deconditioning is a whole trip.
Let's do it. We're so down.
Set it up today.
Yeah. That's so exciting. Is there any other little bits that you would just want like to leave people with what you've shared today, and with your story as well, since this is part 2 from that?
Yeah, I would definitely just encourage people to start small. I know human design is this like beautifully complex, like 1,000 details to get lost in. And if it does feel overwhelming, just know that coming back to strategy and authority are these very tangible and practical tools that help us connect with the wisdom of our body and the unique way that we are designed to operate in this world where we're trying to like make rules for everything. What is that true energy speaking to? Start with strategy and authority if you're looking for somewhere to start. And I would also encourage people to invest in a reader that they trust early on. I definitely self-studied for like years and years before I entrusted someone to look at my design with me. And when I did, I like looked for the cheapest possible
Mhm.
option, and it was very like disjointed information. So yeah, if you find someone who is advanced and embodied in their experiment and that you feel any inkling of trust toward, I would definitely encourage you to book with them, because the synthesis of the little tiny details is where the power of human design really lies, beyond strategy and authority. So
Most definitely. And where can people find you and book a session with you if they really resonate with how you've explained things so far?
yeah, so I am still working on a website. I would encourage people to find me on Instagram, and I have a little link in my bio with a booking link for one-on-one sessions.
Awesome.
And I have a couple different readings there. Like a foundational reading would be a good place to start. But I have some other like kind of custom tailored readings. And if you have something you want to talk about and you feel like it's not represented in one of my existing sessions, just know I'm a projector. I love to be invited to talk about something specific. And so if you want to like do a session and talk about career or relationships or parenting or anything else,
Oh, amazing.
just know I'm happy to kind of curate a session
Cool.
based on specifically what you're looking for.
I love
You
that.
like so in astrology you can like mush people's charts together. Can you do stuff like that with human design?
Yeah, I totally can. I love both, and I love the way that they kind of like breathe life into one another. And so I think right now I have a series of 3 sessions that might be on my website somewhere, called Into the Fire. That's really like, let's go into the deep dark shadows, let's go into the bright shiny lights, and then let's do a session where we bring it all together.
Cool.
Um,
That's cool.
But like if
Yeah,
I
so I
had
love
like
to
my
do-
baby's chart and then like my chart and then like how those like live
Yeah.
together and stuff like that.
Totally. Yeah. I've definitely worked with parents before and talked about like the child's chart and the parent's chart and like how they can impact each other and energetically
Cool.
support each
I want
other.
to do that.
That'd be
sometime.
so helpful. And what is your Instagram handle?
Oh, good question. I love how I said find me on Instagram. Leave it up to y'all to find me. It is my full name with a period in between the first and last. So Allyson, ALLYSON .Forseth, FORSETH.
Okay, great. And we'll make sure to put that in the show notes as well. And we always post on drop days with all the information on our Instagram as well, so people can find you easily that way. Awesome. And then we would love for you to pull a card for us still, if that feels good and yummy for you.
So I'm working with this deck I got pretty recently. It's the Archetypes deck by The Wild Unknown.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
We've had that one pulled on here a couple times.
Cool. Yeah, they're like these really cool circular cards.
Mhm.
So
Did our
Oh.
very first guest ever use that deck?
It's been forever. I don't remember.
I think she did.
all right.
Hmm.
We have our card. Oh, it is the Flame.
Oh,
Into
It's
the
the
flame.
archetype.
interesting.
Into the Fire, and then I pulled the Flame. One critique I have of this deck is that it relies entirely on Roman numerals. And so if you don't know them, it's a little hard
Yeah.
to find what you're looking for. But the Flame, I will read what it says. The fire, the spark, the glimmer. In Sanskrit, the word for fire is Agni. The ancient yogis saw this flame at the center of the abdomen and believed it to be responsible for our vitality. When it is lit, we are connected to our purpose and sense that life is a sacred gift. It is said that those who cannot see the sacred around them have let their inner flame go out. Think of this card as a call to reignite that fire, to cup your hands gently around those things you've forgotten and protect the flame no matter how harshly the winds around you blow. It could be an inner archetype that begs you to light its wick It is likely that the poet, the mystic, or the shaman would call to you with the language of the flame. Those are other archetypes.
Amazing.
But yeah, that reminds me a little bit of the Sacro Center, which we've talked a lot about today, whether you have it defined or not.
I wonder what in my chart makes me so funny.
I would love to see your charts. If you could DM them to me after, I would love
I'll
to
do
see
it.
them.
We'd love that.
Yeah, maybe we'll work together one-on-one.
So good.
So
Okay.
fun. And then we have 2 questions that we love to ask our guests before we sign off as well. And the first one is, what is something that you do for yourself for self-care that you just can't live without?
I'm thinking tea is where I'm gonna land there.
Amazing.
Having a warm beverage.
Do you have a favorite tea right now or tea brand that you always go to?
Yeah, so my current favorites are either a non-tea option, which is hot water with like half a lemon squeezed into it and like a little squeeze of honey. Love that. And then my current favorite tea is the Yogi brand. And the flavor is called Honey Chai Turmeric Vitality.
That one's really
But
good.
it's like a really warming spice kind of decaf option.
I like that one.
If you could tell your younger self, little Allyson, one thing, what would it be?
I think it would be that I feel different because I am, and that I'll find out someday what that means.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I love that. So good. Awesome. Well, this is where we tell our listeners how to go take care of themselves today. Do you want to start?
Yeah, I'm feeling like everyone needs some electrolytes.
I definitely do. Take a nap or just like let yourself rest on the couch. Take a break. Let yourself recharge. Watch your favorite movie or show or just kind of zone out. It's okay. Don't let anyone judge you for what you pick either.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think mine would be when you're scrolling on your phone, just see if you can find a place in your body that feels pleasant and just bring your attention there.
Yeah.
For a few breaths.
Yes. So needed. Awesome.
Thank you so much, Allyson.
Yes.
This was so great. Thank
So
you for
good.
sharing so much time with us.
We
really
so
appreciate
grateful.
This episode has been produced by my husband, Curtis Burgess.
Make sure to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at
Waking Up the Witch. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please email us at wakingupthewitch@gmail.com.
And don't forget to head over to the link in our bio on Instagram for all the ways to connect with both Amber and Taylor. And go to moonbeeswellness.com for all your self-care and witchy needs.
We love you. Bye.
Bye. Ow. Ow.